At a dimly lit intersection in Los Angeles, the rain poured mercilessly against the pavement. Most people hurried past, eager to escape the downpour, but one figure stood motionless, his attention caught by something others had missed. Keanu Reeves, known worldwide for his roles in blockbuster films, found himself drawn to an old sedan parked in a grocery store lot. Through the foggy windows, he could make out the silhouette of a woman cradling a crying infant. The car's interior light cast a soft glow, revealing the exhaustion etched on the mother's face as she gently rocked her baby. Empty food containers and wrinkled clothes scattered across the back seat told a story of desperation that touched Keanu's heart. The woman hadn't noticed him yet, too focused on comforting her child. She whispered soft lullabies, her voice barely audible above the rhythmic drumming of rain. The tenderness of the moment struck a chord with Keanu, reminding him of his own mother's struggles when he was young. Most people knew Keanu Reeves as the star of The Matrix and John Wick, but few understood the depth of his compassion. Throughout his career, he had quietly helped countless individuals, never seeking recognition or praise. Tonight would be no different. The baby's cries grew louder, echoing through the nearly empty parking lot. The mother's shoulders slumped in defeat as she reached for what appeared to be the last bottle of formula. Her hands trembled as she prepared it, each movement speaking of exhaustion and worry. Keanu watched as she checked her phone, probably looking for shelters or assistance, only to set it down with a resigned sigh. The screen's blue light illuminated tears streaming down her cheeks, though she quickly wiped them away, putting on a brave face for her child. What happened next would change not only this woman's life, but would remind the world that sometimes angels wear leather jackets and ride motorcycles. As Keanu stepped forward, the rain soaking through his clothes, he carried with him the power to transform despair into hope. But before we continue this incredible story, take a moment to share in the comments if you've ever witnessed a random act of kindness that changed someone's life. Your story might inspire others to open their hearts and eyes to those in need. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more touching stories that remind us of the power of human compassion. The rain intensified as Keanu approached the car, careful not to startle its occupants. His footsteps were deliberate, measured, creating small ripples in the puddles gathering on the asphalt. The mother remained focused on her baby, unaware of the figure now standing beside her driver's side window. With gentle knuckles, Keanu tapped on the glass. The woman jumped, clutching her baby closer to her chest, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Years of living in Los Angeles had taught her to be wary of strangers, especially at night. But something in Keanu's gentle demeanor made her hesitate before starting the car. Through the foggy window, their eyes met. Recognition flickered across her face, quickly replaced by embarrassment. Here she was, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, standing in the rain, witnessing her lowest moment. She rolled down the window just an inch, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. We'll move. We just needed somewhere to stay dry for a while." Keanu shook his head, rain dripping from his hair. "You don't have to move," he said softly. "But maybe I can help." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. The baby had quieted, seemingly intrigued by the new voice. "I'm Sarah," she managed, her voice cracking. "And this is Emma." The baby cooed at the mention of her name. "We've been here for 3 days. I lost my job, then our apartment." She trailed off, fighting back tears. "I never thought we'd end up like this." Without hesitation, Keanu reached for his wallet. "There's a hotel 2 blocks from here," he said, pulling out several $100 bills. "Get a room, get some rest, get something to eat." He pressed the money into her trembling hands. Sarah stared at the money in disbelief. "I can't accept this," she protested weakly. But Keanu was already shaking his head. "You're not accepting it for yourself," he said, glancing at Emma. "You're accepting it for her." The baby reached out, tiny fingers grasping at the air between them. A small smile crossed Keanu's face as he gently touched her hand. No one should have to sleep in their car, especially not a baby. Sarah's resolve crumbled, tears mixing with raindrops on her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "Just promise me you'll get some real rest tonight," Keanu replied, already stepping back from the car. "Both of you deserve that much." He watched as Sarah carefully tucked the money into her pocket, her hands still shaking. As she started the car, Keanu provided directions to the hotel, ensuring she knew exactly where to go. The engine sputtered to life, and for the first time in days, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. She looked back at Keanu through her rearview mirror, standing in the rain, making sure they departed safely. What neither of them knew in that moment was that this encounter would lead to something far more significant than a single night's shelter. It would become a story of transformation, hope, and the profound impact one person's compassion could have on another's life. Later that night, Keanu sat in his dimly lit living room, unable to shake the image of Sarah and Emma from his mind. The rain continued its steady rhythm against his windows, reminding him of the harsh conditions they had endured for days. His spacious home suddenly felt too empty, too quiet, as he contemplated their struggle. His thoughts drifted to his own past, to moments when life had tested his resilience. He remembered his sister Kim's battle with leukemia, how she had fought against impossible odds. The memory of those hospital visits, the uncertainty and the fear had shaped his understanding of human suffering. It had taught him that sometimes people just need someone to notice their pain, to reach out when the world seems darkest. Running his fingers through his still damp hair, Keanu reached for his phone. The hotel manager, an old friend named Mike, answered on the second ring. "They checked in about an hour ago," Mike confirmed before Keanu could even ask. "The little one's finally sleeping. The mother, she couldn't stop crying when she saw the room. Said it was the first real bed they'd seen in weeks." The words hit Keanu like a physical force. Weeks. They had been struggling for weeks while people passed by, too busy with their own lives to notice. He found himself wondering about their story, about the chain of events that had led them to that parking lot. "Listen, Mike," Keanu said, his voice firm with determination. "Whatever they need, food, supplies for the baby, anything, put it on my tab. And let me know if they try to leave tomorrow." The thought of them returning to that car was unbearable. After hanging up, Keanu paced his living room, his mind racing with possibilities. He had the resources to help, but experience had taught him that throwing money at problems wasn't always the answer. People needed more than just financial assistance. They needed opportunities, support, and most importantly, dignity. He thought about his own journey in Hollywood, how different his life might have been without the people who believed in him, who gave him chances when he needed them most. Success hasn't changed his fundamental belief that everyone deserves a fair shot at life, especially those society tends to overlook. The baby's face flashed in his mind. Emma, so innocent, her future hanging in the balance. Her mother's determination to protect her, even in the darkest circumstances, spoke of a strength that deserved support, not judgment. Making his way to his study, Keanu began making calls. He knew people, social workers, job placement specialists, housing advocates, who could help create a sustainable path forward for Sarah and Emma. By the time he finally went to bed, the first rays of dawn were creeping over the horizon. But he had the beginnings of a plan. Tomorrow, he will return to the hotel, not as Keanu Reeves, the actor, but as someone who understood that sometimes life's most meaningful moments come from reaching out to those who have lost hope. What started as a chance encounter in the rain was about to become something much more significant, a testament to the power of human connection and the possibility of new beginnings. The next morning, Keanu returned to the hotel, finding Sarah and Emma exactly where he'd hoped, still in their room, though Sarah was clearly anxious about overstaying her welcome. When he knocked on the door, she opened it with trepidation. Emma balanced on her hip, both looking better after a night of proper rest. "I thought maybe we could get some breakfast," Keanu suggested, gesturing to a small cafe across the street. Sarah hesitated, looking down at her wrinkled clothes and the baby's mismatched outfit. Reading her thoughts, Keanu added softly, "No one will bother us. I know the owner." The cafe was quiet, tucked away from the bustle of Los Angeles traffic. In a corner booth over steaming cups of coffee and a warm breakfast, Sarah's story began to unfold. Emma contentedly played with a small stuffed bear the waitress had brought her, completely unaware of the weight of the conversation around her. "I was a dental assistant," Sarah began, her fingers wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. "Had the job for 6 years, but then the practice closed suddenly. No warning, no severance, just locked doors one Monday morning." Her voice trembled as she continued. "I had some savings, but Emma got sick. The medical bills—" She trailed off, looking at her daughter with a mixture of love and worry. One thing led to another. Couldn't make rent, couldn't find work fast enough. "My family—" She paused, taking a shaky breath. "They're not in the picture. Haven't been for years. I thought about shelters, but most have waiting lists, and the ones that don't. I've heard stories about what happens to people there, especially kids." Keanu listened intently, his breakfast untouched. Each word painted a clearer picture of how quickly life could unravel, how the systems meant to protect people often failed those who needed them most. Sarah wasn't looking for handouts. She was looking for a chance to rebuild. "You're good with her," Keanu observed as Emma reached for him, giggling. "She's happy, despite everything. That says a lot about you as a mother." Sarah's eyes welled with tears at the unexpected compliment. For weeks, she'd felt like a failure, questioning every decision that had led them here. "I just want to give her a better life," Sarah whispered, watching as Keanu gently played peekaboo with Emma. "She deserves so much more than this." Something in her words resonated deeply with Keanu. He'd seen enough of Hollywood's excesses to know that true worth wasn't measured in dollars or status, but in the love and dedication Sarah showed her daughter, even in their darkest moments. As they finished their breakfast, Keanu made a call that would change the trajectory of Sarah and Emma's lives. "Linda, it's Keanu. Remember that favor you owe me? I need your help with something important." Linda Martinez was more than just a social worker. She was someone Keanu trusted to handle delicate situations with both professionalism and heart. Within an hour, Linda arrived at the cafe, her warm smile immediately putting Sarah at ease. Emma, who had been dozing in her mother's arms, perked up at the new arrival, offering one of her infectious baby giggles. The sound seemed to fill the small cafe with hope. "I've been talking with Keanu," Linda explained, spreading out some paperwork on the table. "There's a transitional housing program I work with. It's not just a place to stay. It's a complete support system. Job training, childcare, financial counseling. Everything you need to get back on your feet." Sarah's hands trembled as she looked through the materials. The program seemed too good to be true. A furnished apartment, on-site daycare, and career development services. "But surely there's a waiting list," she said softly, trying not to let hope take root too deeply. Keanu exchanged a look with Linda before speaking. "I've made some arrangements," he said simply. "There's a unit available now, if you want it." What he didn't mention was the substantial donation he'd made to the program that morning, or the strings he'd pulled to expedite the process. "I don't know what to say," Sarah whispered, tears welling in her eyes once again. Emma reached up to pat her mother's cheek, a gesture so pure it brought smiles to everyone at the table. It's more than I ever dreamed possible." Linda leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. This program works because everyone involved, from the staff to the participants, becomes like family. We're here to help you succeed." As they discussed the details, Keanu quietly settled the bill and arranged for a car to take them to the housing complex. He watched as Sarah signed the necessary paperwork, her hand steady despite the emotion of the moment. This wasn't charity. It was an opportunity, one she was clearly ready to seize. "Before you go," Keanu said, pulling out a business card, "this is my private number. If you ever need anything at all, don't hesitate to call." He paused, looking at Emma, who was now fascinated by Linda's colorful scarf. Sometimes life knocks us down, but it's the getting back up that defines us. Sarah clutched the card like a lifeline, understanding the magnitude of what was being offered. Not just help, but a genuine connection to someone who saw her worth beyond her current circumstances. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for the help, but for seeing us that night. For caring enough to stop." As Linda prepared to drive them to their new home, Keanu stood back, watching the scene unfold. In Hollywood, happy endings were scripted, rehearsed, and perfectly lit. But this raw, real moment of hope being born was more powerful than any scene he'd ever filmed. The transition from car to apartment wasn't just a change of location, it was a transformation of spirit. Sarah and Emma's new home, though modest, felt like a palace compared to their recent circumstances. The one-bedroom unit came furnished with basic necessities: a comfortable bed, a crib for Emma, a small dining table, and even a few toys donated by the program's supporters. Behind the scenes, Keanu worked tirelessly, though he insisted on remaining anonymous in most of his contributions. He reached out to contacts throughout Los Angeles, quietly arranging job interviews and opportunities for Sarah. His philosophy was simple: give people the tools they need, then step back and let them build their own success. "Mr. Reeves has been doing this for years," Linda confided to her colleague one afternoon, watching Sarah attend a computer skills workshop while Emma played in the on-site daycare. "Most people never hear about it. He believes true charity doesn't need an audience." The transformation in Sarah became evident within days. With the weight of homelessness lifted from her shoulders, her natural intelligence and determination began to shine through. She threw herself into the program's offerings, attending every workshop, taking notes during financial literacy classes, and staying late to practice her typing skills. Emma, too, flourished in their new environment. The daycare staff adored her, noting how quickly she adapted to the routine. Her giggles echoed through the halls, bringing smiles to the faces of other program participants, many of whom were fighting their own battles to rebuild their lives. One evening, as Sarah put Emma to bed in their new home, she found a package outside their door. Inside was a photo album, empty except for a single picture, the one Linda had taken of them with Keanu at the cafe. Attached was a note: "For new memories, the past is just the beginning of your story. K." The gesture moved Sarah to tears, but they were different from the tears she'd shed in her car just weeks ago. These were tears of hope, of possibility, of a future she could finally see clearly. She spent that evening filling the first few pages with pictures of Emma exploring their new home, her daughter's smile a testament to their growing stability. Keanu's influence extended beyond the immediate help he'd provided. His reputation in Hollywood opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed. When local businesses heard he was personally vouching for the program's participants, job offers began to materialize. But he was careful to ensure these opportunities were based on merit, not mere charity. "The key," he explained to Linda during one of their check-ins, "is to give people a chance to prove themselves. Everyone has value. Everyone has potential. Sometimes they just need someone to remind them of that fact." In their apartment, Sarah hung the photo of their cafe meeting in a simple frame by Emma's crib. It served as a daily reminder that rock bottom wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning of their climb back up. Every night, as she kissed Emma goodnight, she whispered a quiet thank you to the man who had seen them when they were invisible to the rest of the world. The ripple effect of Keanu's kindness began to spread in unexpected ways. One morning, while Sarah was attending a job readiness workshop, Emma charmed everyone in the daycare center with her infectious laughter. The sound drew Keanu, who had stopped by for a quiet check-in, to the doorway. He stood there watching as Emma stacked colorful blocks, her face lighting up each time they tumbled down. The daycare worker noticed him and smiled, gesturing for him to come in. Without hesitation, Keanu sat cross-legged on the floor beside Emma, who immediately offered him a red block. "She's different from when you first found them," the daycare worker observed softly. "More confident, more playful. Children can sense when their parents are struggling. Now that Sarah's finding her feet, Emma's blooming too." For the next hour, Keanu built block towers with Emma. Each crash met with delighted squeals. When Sarah came to collect her daughter, she found them engaged in an animated game of peekaboo. The sight of one of Hollywood's biggest stars making silly faces at her daughter brought tears to her eyes. "She has your spirit," Keanu said, standing up and brushing off his jeans. "That determination to keep trying, no matter how many times the blocks fall down." His words carried a deeper meaning that wasn't lost on Sarah. Later that week, Sarah received her first callback for a job interview. The position was at a dental office that had heard about her situation through Linda's network. As she prepared for the interview, the community rallied around her. One resident helped her practice common interview questions, while another offered to watch Emma. Keanu, true to his nature, provided support from a distance. He arranged for a professional outfit to be delivered to her door, tagged only with a simple note, "You've got this, K." The gesture brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes, but they were tears of gratitude and determination. The day of the interview, Sarah walked into the dental office with her head held high. The confidence she'd gained through the program's workshops showed in her posture, her handshake, her responses to questions. When asked about the gap in her employment, she was honest about her struggles but emphasized her determination to rebuild. "Everyone faces challenges," she explained to the interviewer. "What matters is how you rise above them and who helps you along the way." The interviewer, touched by her candor, leaned forward with increased interest. Back at the housing complex, Emma spent the morning with her favorite daycare teacher, oblivious to the importance of her mother's interview. When Sarah returned, her face glowing with hope, the entire community held their breath waiting for news. "They want me to start next week," she announced, her voice trembling with joy. The hallway erupted in cheers, with Linda quickly spreading the word to their anonymous benefactor. Keanu, receiving the news on set, smiled quietly to himself, knowing this was just the beginning of Sarah's journey back to independence. Sarah's first day at work marked a milestone in her journey. Standing before the mirror in her apartment, dressed in her new scrubs, she barely recognized the confident woman staring back at her. Emma, sitting on the bed surrounded by stuffed animals, most of them mysteriously appearing over the past weeks with small notes signed K, clapped her tiny hands at her mother's transformation. The dental office proved to be more than just a workplace. It became a second family. Dr. Richardson, the owner, had a special way of making Sarah feel valued, often asking for her input on improving office procedures. What Sarah didn't know was that Keanu had shared her full story with the doctor, emphasizing her dedication and work ethic rather than her past struggles. 2 weeks into her new position, Sarah received her first paycheck. The moment was overwhelming, holding tangible proof of her revival. During her lunch break, she sat in the break room, staring at the check with tears streaming down her face. It wasn't just money. It was independence, dignity, and hope, all wrapped into one piece of paper. That evening, as she picked up Emma from daycare, she found Keanu waiting in the lobby, casually leafing through a children's book. He looked up with that gentle smile that had first given her hope on that rainy night. "I heard today was payday," he said simply. Sarah pulled out the check, her hands trembling slightly. "I can start repaying you," she began, but Keanu held up his hand, shaking his head. "The only repayment I want is to see you and Emma thrive," he said firmly. "Use that money to build your future." Emma, recognizing Keanu, toddled over to him with her arms raised. He scooped her up and she immediately began playing with his long hair, a game that had become their ritual during his visits. "Besides," he added, bouncing Emma gently, "I think I'm getting paid in giggles and hair pulls." The moment was interrupted by Dr. Richardson, who had stopped by to drop off some paperwork. Seeing Keanu with Emma, she smiled knowingly. "Sarah's been amazing," she reported. "We're actually thinking of sending her for additional training. She has a natural talent for pediatric dentistry." Sarah's eyes widened at this news. The possibility of advancement, of a career rather than just a job, had seemed impossible just weeks ago. Now, standing in the lobby with her daughter laughing in Keanu's arms and her boss praising her work, she felt the final pieces of her new life falling into place. "I was thinking," Keanu said, setting Emma down to toddle between them, "it's time to celebrate your success. How about dinner this weekend? There's a family restaurant nearby where no one will bother us." The invitation was delivered casually, but Sarah understood its significance. This wasn't charity anymore. This was friendship. Dr. Richardson watched this interaction with warm understanding. She had seen many stories of hardship in her years of practice, but few transformations as profound as Sarah's, and fewer still that involved the quiet, persistent kindness of someone like Keanu Reeves. Word of Keanu's involvement in Sarah and Emma's story eventually leaked to the media. A junior reporter spotted them at the family restaurant, noticed the comfortable familiarity between them, and started digging. Within days, social media buzzed with headlines about the Hollywood star's latest act of kindness. But true to his nature, Keanu deflected attention from himself. When reporters called for comments, his only response was, "This story isn't about me. It's about a mother's courage and a community's compassion." His humility only made the story more compelling to the public. Local news stations began featuring pieces about the transitional housing program. Linda found herself fielding calls from potential donors and volunteers. "It's the Keanu effect," she explained to Sarah one afternoon. "He doesn't just help people, he inspires others to help too." Sarah watched in amazement as the community around them grew stronger. Other residents of the program found themselves benefiting from the increased attention. Job offers poured in, donations filled the daycare with new toys, and volunteers offered everything from career counseling to children's reading sessions. Through it all, Keanu remained a steady presence in their lives, though he was careful to stay out of the spotlight. He would slip in quietly to visit Emma, bringing her small gifts, a picture book here, a stuffed animal there, always with the same gentle smile that had first given Sarah hope. The friendship that developed between them was genuine and unexpected. Sarah discovered that beneath the celebrity exterior was a man of profound empathy and wisdom. During their conversations, he shared stories of his own struggles, his belief in the power of second chances, and his conviction that every person deserves the opportunity to rebuild their life. One evening, after Emma had fallen asleep clutching her newest stuffed elephant, a gift from Uncle Keanu, as she'd started calling him, Sarah found a small package outside their door. Inside was a framed photograph taken at the restaurant. Sarah, Emma, and Keanu laughing together, completely unaware of the camera. The moment captured wasn't staged or posed. It was pure joy. The note attached read, "Sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into. Thank you for letting me be part of yours. K." Sarah hung the photo next to the one from their first meeting at the cafe. The contrast between the two images told the story of their journey, from desperate survival to genuine happiness. But more than that, it showed the power of compassion to transform lives. As the media attention gradually died down, what remained was stronger than any headline, a bond forged through kindness, strengthened by trust, and sustained by genuine care. Keanu's initial act of stopping to help a homeless mother and baby had evolved into something neither of them had expected, a lasting connection that proved family isn't always about blood, but about the hearts that choose to beat in harmony. 6 months after their fateful meeting in the rain, Sarah and Emma's transformation was complete. Not only had Sarah excelled at her job, but she had also completed additional certification courses in pediatric dental assistance, sponsored quietly by Keanu through the practice. Their new apartment, a modest but comfortable 2-bedroom they'd moved into last month, felt like a real home. Emma, now toddling confidently and chattering in half-formed sentences, had blossomed into a happy, secure child. Her daycare teachers remarked on her natural leadership abilities, how she would help other children build with blocks or share her toys. "She has her mother's strength," Keanu observed during one of his visits, "and her kindness too." One particularly meaningful milestone came when Sarah received her first bonus at work. Instead of banking it all, she made a decision that brought tears to Keanu's eyes. She donated a portion to the transitional housing program that had helped her rebuild her life. "I want other mothers to have the same chance I did," she explained to Keanu over coffee one afternoon. Emma played nearby with her favorite elephant, occasionally bringing it over for Uncle Keanu to admire. Success isn't just about getting ahead of yourself, it's about helping others find their way too. Dr. Richardson had promoted Sarah to lead dental assistant, citing her exceptional patient care and organizational skills. The frightened, desperate woman from the parking lot was now a confident professional, mentoring new staff members and developing a special rapport with anxious young patients. "Watch this," Sarah said proudly one evening when Keanu stopped by. She opened her laptop to show him her newly established savings account, complete with an emergency fund and the beginnings of a college fund for Emma. "I never thought I'd see numbers like these again," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. Keanu smiled, remembering the woman who had been afraid to accept money for a hotel room that first night. "You did this," he reminded her gently. "All of it. I just opened a door. You walked through it and built this life yourself." The truth was, Sarah had done more than just survive. She had created a template for others to follow. The transitional housing program now used her story, with her permission, to show new residents what was possible. Linda often invited her to speak at orientation sessions, where her honest account of hitting bottom and climbing back up gave others the courage to believe in themselves. Emma, unaware of the magnitude of their journey, simply knew she was loved. She had her mother's undivided attention, a safe place to call home, and an extended family that included not just Uncle Keanu, but the entire community that had embraced them. "Sometimes," Sarah mused, watching Emma demonstrate her block stacking technique to Keanu for the 100th time, "I think about that night in the car, how close I was to giving up hope. One person's kindness changed everything. Not just the help you gave us, but the fact that you saw us at all." Before we continue this incredible journey of transformation, tell us in the comments what kindness means to you. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone's compassion changed your life's direction? Your story might inspire others to keep hope alive in their darkest moments. In a quiet moment between appointments at the dental office, Sarah found herself writing a letter to Keanu. The words flowed easily, carrying the weight of gratitude and reflection that had been building in her heart for months. Her hands steady, she began to pour out everything she had been unable to express in person. "Dear Keanu," she wrote, "how do you thank someone who not only saved your life, but showed you how to truly live it? That rainy night in the parking lot feels like another lifetime now. I was a different person then, broken, hopeless, convinced that the world had turned its back on Emma and me. But you didn't just offer us shelter for a night. You restored my faith in humanity." She paused, wiping away tears that threatened to smudge the ink. Through the office window, she could see children playing in the park across the street, reminding her of Emma's own transformation from a baby crying in a cold car to a thriving, happy toddler. "Emma asks about you every day," she continued writing. "She keeps your picture by her bed, the one of you both building block towers. She tells everyone that her Uncle Keanu taught her how to make them super tall. But what she doesn't understand yet, what I hope to teach her someday, is that you taught us both something far more valuable: how to build a life from the ground up." Keanu received the letter at his home one evening after a long day of filming. As he read Sarah's words, his own eyes filled with unexpected tears. Her story had touched him in ways he hadn't anticipated, reminding him of his own struggles and the people who had believed in him when he needed it most. His response came in the form of a thoughtful phone call. "Your letter," he said softly when Sarah answered. "It means more than you know, but please understand, you and Emma gave me something too. You reminded me why I started doing this in the first place." That evening, as news of another charitable donation from Keanu made headlines, the reporter asked him about his motivation for helping others. His response was simple but profound. We're all in this together. Sometimes people just need to be reminded they're not alone. The media painted him as a hero, but Keanu constantly redirected the attention to the broader message of community and compassion. In interviews, he spoke not about his own actions, but about the resilience of people like Sarah, the dedication of social workers like Linda, and the importance of seeing those who might otherwise remain invisible. The real story, he told one particularly persistent reporter, isn't about celebrity kindness. It's about human connection. It's about recognizing that every person has value, has potential, and deserves a chance to prove it. Back at her apartment, Sarah tucked away Keanu's response letter in a special box she kept for Emma's future. Someday her daughter would understand the full impact of that rainy night, and the man who had changed their lives, not just through his resources, but through his unwavering belief in their worth. On a bright Sunday afternoon, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Sarah sat on her living room floor, arms outstretched, while Emma stood wobbling between her and Keanu. The little girl's face was scrunched in concentration, her tiny fingers gripping the edge of the coffee table for support. "Come on, sweetheart," Sarah encouraged softly. "You can do it. Just a few steps." Emma looked from her mother to Keanu, who sat cross-legged a few feet away, his famous smile warm and encouraging. The stuffed elephant he'd given her months ago sat in his lap, almost like a cheerleader for this momentous occasion. "Remember what we practiced, Princess," Keanu said gently. "One foot, then the other." His voice carried the same patience that had guided Sarah through her darkest days. Emma's grip on the table loosened slightly as she bounced in place, gathering courage. The first step was tentative, wobbly. The second came with a bit more confidence. By the third step, Emma had released the table completely, her arms outstretched like a tiny tightrope walker. Sarah held her breath, tears welling in her eyes as she watched her daughter take her first independent steps. Time seemed to slow down as Emma made her way across the small space between them. Each step was a victory, each wobble a moment of suspense. When she finally reached Sarah's arms, the room erupted in cheers. Emma's delighted giggle mixed with her mother's joyful sobs. "My brave girl," Sarah whispered, pulling Emma close. "You did it!" Keanu watched the scene unfold, his own eyes glistening with emotion. This wasn't just about first steps. It was about how far they'd all come together. From a desperate night in a parking lot to this moment of pure joy, their journey had been one of countless small victories leading to profound transformation. Emma, clearly pleased with her accomplishment, immediately wanted to try again. This time she toddled toward Keanu, her face beaming with pride. He caught her in his arms, spinning her around gently as she squealed with delight. "You're going to be unstoppable now," he laughed, settling her in his lap. Sarah captured the moment on her phone, adding to their growing collection of memories. The contrast between these images and that rainy night couldn't have been starker. Here was her daughter, taking her first steps in a warm, safe home, surrounded by love and support. "Thank you," Sarah said softly to Keanu, though the words felt inadequate for everything he'd done. He shook his head, still bouncing Emma on his knee. "This was all her," he replied, "and you. I just got to be here to witness it." The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the scene. Emma's first steps marked more than just a developmental milestone. They symbolized the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with possibility and promise. As Sarah's life stabilized and flourished, she felt an increasing urge to help others who were struggling as she once had. The idea came to her one evening after watching Emma play with another child at the transitional housing complex during a visit. She approached Keanu with a proposal that would change even more lives. "I want to start an outreach program," she explained, her voice filled with determination. "Something specifically for single mothers living in their cars. We could provide immediate assistance and connect them with resources." Her eyes sparkled with purpose as she outlined her vision. Keanu listened intently, a proud smile playing at his lips. Without hesitation, He offered to provide initial funding, but with one condition. "This needs to be your project, Sarah. Your vision, your leadership. You know better than anyone what these women need." Within months, Emma's Angels was born, named after the little girl whose story had inspired it all. Sarah worked tirelessly, coordinating with local businesses, shelters, and social services. The program offered emergency hotel vouchers, job placement assistance, and perhaps most importantly, hope. Keanu kept his word about staying in the background, though his support never wavered. He watched with quiet pride as Sarah transformed from someone who needed help to someone who helped others. The program's first success story was a young mother named Maria and her 3-year-old son. "I was where you are," Sarah told Maria during their first meeting. "Sleeping in my car, thinking there was no way out. But there is. You just need someone to believe in you until you can believe in yourself again." The words echoed what Keanu had shown her through actions rather than words. The program grew rapidly, gaining attention from local media and community leaders. Sarah found herself speaking at city council meetings, advocating for better resources for homeless families. Her passionate speeches often drew from personal experience, moving even the most hardened officials to action. Emma, now a precocious toddler, became the unofficial mascot of the program. Her presence at events reminded everyone of the innocent lives affected by homelessness. "Every child deserves a safe place to sleep," became Sarah's rallying cry, and communities responded. One afternoon, while watching Sarah conduct a training session for new volunteers, Keanu reflected on how far they'd come. The frightened woman from the parking lot was now a confident leader, inspiring others with her story of resilience and redemption. "You know what makes this program special?" he overheard a volunteer say. "It's not just about giving people things. It's about giving them dignity, showing them they matter." Sarah caught his eye across the room and smiled, knowing that was exactly what he had done for her. The initiative's success sparked similar programs in neighboring cities. Sarah found herself consulting with other organizations, sharing her experiences and helping them establish their own outreach efforts. What had started as one man's act of kindness had grown into a movement of compassion and change. A year after that rainy night in the parking lot, Keanu attended a special event celebrating the success of Emma's Angels. The community center buzzed with energy as families who had been helped by the program gathered to share their stories. Sarah stood at the podium, Emma balanced on her hip, addressing the crowd with confidence and grace. "Sometimes the darkest moments in our lives become turning points," she began, her voice steady and strong. "A year ago, I was homeless, hopeless, and convinced that my daughter and I were invisible to the world. Then someone saw us, really saw us, and everything changed." From his seat in the back of the room, Keanu watched with quiet pride. The walls were lined with before and after photos of families who had found their way back from the brink. Each image told a story of transformation, of hope rekindled, of lives rebuilt from the ground up. Emma, now a confident toddler, squirmed down from her mother's arms and made her way through the crowd, stopping to hug familiar faces. She had become a symbol of hope for the program, living proof that even the smallest lives could be transformed by compassion and opportunity. Through Emma's Angels, we've helped 37 families transition from their cars to stable housing, Sarah continued. But more importantly, we've created a community where people know they matter, where they're not just statistics or problems to be solved, but human beings worthy of dignity and respect. As applause filled the room, Keanu noticed mothers embracing, children playing together, and volunteers sharing proud smiles. The ripple effect of that one rainy night had created waves of change throughout the community. What had started as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something far more powerful. Sarah finished her speech to a standing ovation, but it was her final words that touched hearts most deeply. Success isn't measured by how far you climb, but by how many people you bring with you. Every one of us has the power to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to stop and see them. As the celebration continued, Keanu quietly slipped out the back door. His work here was done. He had provided the spark, but Sarah and Emma had ignited a flame that would continue to burn brightly, lighting the way for others lost in darkness. Outside, the sky threatened rain, much like the night he'd first spotted them in that parking lot. But now, instead of despair, the clouds promised renewal and hope. Somewhere inside, Emma's laughter rang out, a joyful reminder that sometimes the greatest stories of transformation begin with a single moment of compassion. The legacy of their journey would continue to inspire others, proving that true change comes not just from grand gestures, but from the simple act of seeing the worth in every human being. As Keanu walked away, blending into the evening crowds, he carried with him the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness are the ones that empower others to become heroes of their own stories. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they matter. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that show the extraordinary impact of ordinary compassion.